data being the new oil and all of that, and you need to get your data right. I agree with all of that, but I think over a decade the page has turned. Today the page is on intelligence. How do you take that data that we talked about for a decade and make intelligent decisions and intelligent actions?
Welcome to UpTech Report. This is our Apply Tech series. UpTech Report is sponsored by Terraleap. Learn how to leverage the power of video at terraleap.io. Today, I'm joined by my guest, Debjani Deb, who's based in Saratoga, California. She's the CEO of ZineOne. Welcome, Debjani. Good to have you on.
Great to be on.
Now, ZineOne, if I understand correctly, is an intelligent customer engagement platform. Your focus is in the enterprise market, really helping in that real-time marketing space for e-commerce, helping enterprise companies get more understanding of what their customers are doing and are wanting to purchase. Do I have that correct?
Yes. So essentially, when we started, what we looked forward to addressing was that we believe that the world is going to a real-time world, which what I mean by that, as brands and consumers interact, there is an expectation from the likes of Uber and others like that, the challengers that are in the market, if you would, that brands need to understand the consumer in that moment. You need to understand the consumer in that moment. You need to react with value-added interactions in the moment. And that's sort of the bar, if you would, that has been set. So what we wanted to do was we wanted to define the next generation of an engagement platform that allows brands in an omni-channel way to interact with their consumer wherever they are, in a location sensitive, environment sensitive, context sensitive, very highly intelligent way. And that's really what we set out to solve. And today we are in market with an enterprise grade product that allows you to do that.
What would you say is the challenge, the real issue that your enterprise clients are facing and that you're looking to solve? What is that challenge they're feeling?
I think there is a step function difference between what I call the challenger mentality, sort of the next generation new age brands that have come in and set the bar. Uber is a good example of it. There are lots of brands in music, in retail, Wayfair, others that have grown up in a internet first, mobile first world, and they have created the expectation from the consumer that me wherever I am. The traditional brands, the brands we love and have known for a decade or two, Macy's, Nordstrom, Bank of America, and every vertical really, are under pressure to be able to meet those consumer expectations, because I have an app on my phone that's a Uber app and a Spotify app, and then I have the Bank of America, and I am not really thinking that they're two different genres. My expectation is they meet my need wherever I am in the same way. So that's really the need, that how do you take the traditional brands to this new form of engagement with its consumer.
So it's the startup world that has kind of set the stage of what consumers are expecting in their experience with an organization, and now traditional brands are having to adapt and change, and that's difficult for a giant company to have to make that shift. I'd love to hear now a bit more of your story. I mean, did you just wake up one day and say, "Oh, I want to build a customer engagement platform because this will be wonderful"?
Yeah, a really good question. And the answer, of course, is no, I did not. So essentially, I'm a serial entrepreneur. Last company I did was in 2005. This was when Facebook was 1 year old. And we were, my sort of way of doing business has always been customers lead the way. So we went and talked to a bunch of customers. They were like, in that case, it was P&G. Coca-Cola, Pepsi. We went and talked to them, and we were essentially focused on the thought process of what is analytics and what is how is analytics thought of in 2005.
This is Empower, correct? Empower.
Right. Long story short, people were talking about social media and blogs as a way to do analytics, and we were a bunch of smart people. We said, hey, social can tell us a lot about trends and so on and so forth. So that started that whole company called Social Analytics, which went for 6 years, big success, and so on and so forth. So that was happening as Facebook was, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. So when we started this, we, of course, sort of had an idea where we wanted to go with it, which is we knew that the world was going to real time. We knew there was more work necessary to meet the consumer's need in a real time fashion. We could see it everywhere. Like, calls coming into the call center, the agent doesn't know what the consumer is doing. So there is a necessity for a feedback loop to understand the consumer. So that's what we went after. But it took a lot of customer co-development, customer really working hand in hand with a few large customers to understand what that meant and what therefore would the product be.
It's fascinating for you already you said the beginning of Facebook. You're already seeing the integration of social platforms playing a role with brands. Is that when it just like started for you? You started to see the connections and kind of led the way to where ZineOne is today?
Absolutely, because I saw, I worked with heads of digital, very closely of Fortune 500. My customers were people like, as I said, P&G, Coca-Cola, Nokia, Pfizer, Novartis. These were all my customers, and I was working with the digital groups. In that case, with social analytics, but I was very close to them, and I understood where they were going. So hence, sort of the next generation meant consumer engagement platforms that are context aware.
A lot of this has been you're developing the industry in some ways as it's been being created. What are bad recommendations that you've heard or seen in this industry, in this marketplace? Is there any you've heard someone say, "Oh, brands should really be doing this," and you just shake your head? Is there any recommendations you've heard that you would not recommend?
It's sort of an evolution in my mind, right? And, recommendations in regards to that evolution, there is a lot of discussion and has been for the last decade on data being the new oil and all of that. And, you need to get your data right. I agree with all of that. But I think over a decade, the page has turned. Today, the page is on intelligence. How do you take that data that we talked about for a decade and make intelligent decisions and intelligent actions? So I'm a big believer in a new evolution of an intelligence layer over the data layer that allows these brands and retail and banks to look at that data and take intelligent decisions and actions in real time. That's our thing, real-time marketing, so that you can contextually react. So I would say, this new sort of decade is about the intelligence layer. It is about harnessing the power of data to take action.
I appreciate this concept you say of it's a continual learning, or it's an evolution. It's something you're constantly building upon. If you think back over the years, whether it's ZineOne or Empower, do you have a favorite failure or challenge that you just faced? You're like, wow, we didn't do that right, but learn from that.
Oh, there are so many. Where should I begin? But I think what is common to startups, like at our stage where you're going from Series A to a B to a C, right? Where you're sort of in that very strong hockey stick portion of that growth, is that it's all about scale, right? And startup founders start with this sort of misnomer, because you're 3 people in a room trying to solve world hunger, that you can do it all, right? And you start with that notion that I can. But as you grow, it is about your team, your people, empowered people that are on a mission with a vision that drives them, that are set to change the world at scale, because you cannot do it all. So, sort of the lessons that I learned along the way is that, it is not so much about yourself, but about the team you build, the team you empower, the people you pick to be with you in this journey, and how you sort of enable that infrastructure and ecosystem in either a tremendous shooting star kind of momentum way or not. So all of us startup founders are really, our primary job is how do you take that set of people and give them that vision and that mission so that they outperform themselves, if you would.
Are there any realizations or approaches in the past 5 years to that effect of how to empower your team that you found have worked well? Any tips?
A lot of tips, I think, along the way, right? So the one thing that sort of jumps out at me over this 15-year period is that be very conscious about who you pick to be on this journey. Because every individual, every person has their strengths and weaknesses, things they're good at, things they're not good at. And it's not about molding so much but it's about picking the right people for the right jobs. So be very diligent about your co-founder as you put them together. Be very diligent about your leadership team. Like, spend the time evaluating to make sure that you pick the right individuals, and then really put together a culture that builds on itself. This is a very competitive market, and a very competitive market both from the perspective of sales, but also from the perspective of employee attracting the right employees and retaining them. Silicon Valley is booming, and globally, the worldwide, the labor market is booming. So it's not really about the money you pay or anything like that. It really is about an alignment to a vision and a culture, and really an appeal to each person's desire to succeed that you need to tap into. And how you do that is on you, the founders and the leadership. And that's really where you should focus and really build a strong team.
Has there been any worthwhile investments that you've seen of that have helped grow your team, help keep that culture and that focus, or that this investment could be a time or a product or a mentality?
I think it's all of the above. Time, certainly. I grew up in India, so the culture was very much about very hierarchical culture, especially in the corporate world, where the leader sort of set the agenda and everybody followed. I actually have relearned, because I came here at a young age, and I could perhaps write a book on this. I think I believe it is not so much as telling people what to do, but motivating them that they themselves want to do it. So it is a very different mentality, which takes time, lots of time investment, time in each individual, and really a thought process of how you lay the bigger picture, the bigger arc for your company and your team and as individuals, and how you enable the set of people that are motivated to travel with you on that arc.
I can only imagine the experiences you've had to be able to grow and constantly develop. Are there any books that you've always recommend or maybe give away to other people and that kind of have influenced how you think?
I read a lot of leadership books. So many of the books from President Obama, Gates. Most recently, we had an offsite for ZineOne as we all came back from quarantine and back to civilization,
In person, yeah.
And I sent out the Bill Campbell's book, The $1 Trillion Coach, to the entire leadership team, because it was about how do you coach your people, how do you coach the team, how do you take it to the next level. At companies like ours that are in that stage, leadership itself as it's defined changes at each stage. I can tell you that what worked really well when we were a 5-person company needed changing when we were 20, needed changing when we were 70, and needed changing when you're 100, 200, and so on. So leadership is a large part of my vocabulary and how we enable sort of growth and scale. I was talking to one of my leadership team members yesterday, and the pressure of hiring fast and fueling growth is so incredible that often one leads to making wrong choices in regards to who you hire. And this is such an expensive mistake that one of the things that I would tell entrepreneurs is spend the time before you hire. Really put a diligent process in place as to how you pick your team members, because that will serve you in the long term.
Powerful insight is people are what you actually build the entire company on, and be able to establish the technology. For you, the focus on this industry, do you just have an interest in it? Like, what drives your own personal passion in this space?
So, I have been around sort of this digital evolution in one way or the other for the last 20 some years. An interesting anecdote, I used to be at AT&T Bell Labs, which in the day was the bastion of where all the cool research and ideas came out of. And in 2 decades ago, we were writing research papers about how work from home would evolve with higher bandwidth and this, that, and other. And 2 decades later, we are actually living that. So, I have had a front row seat to this evolution in one way or the other through my career. And it is the time, right? Essentially, COVID accelerated digital transformation and evolution and all of that. So if there was ever a time for somebody like me to be having fun and really looking at everything that we talked about coming to fruition, from self-driving cars to, had a long conversation about self-driving cars yesterday, but self-driving cars to 5G to everything else, this is the time. And I strongly believe that unless enterprises are able to keep up with the demands of this highly fragmented technology stack that allows you so much power through the compute and the storage that has become available through the evolution in cloud and the evolutions in machine learning technologies that lets you take hordes and hordes of data and make sense of it in real time, you will be left behind. So that's where we come in, which says, there is a lot of, like, we get from any of our clients sort of, 10 million user data streams coming in at any given time in real time into our system. So the learnings of how consumers are reacting to brands across North America and the globe is at our fingertips, and what we do with it to enable the value back to the consumer in a very highly privacy-centered world, because you don't want to spam them, you don't want to be overt, but you want to add value in that moment when somebody walks into a store, when somebody walks into a bank, when somebody is shopping. Just in that moment, tell me what I need and help me with it. Tell me how many loyalty points I have, because that would be helpful as I shop rather than finding out later. Tell me how many more dollars I need to be at the shipping threshold. That would be helpful when I am shopping right now. Tell me what would go with this pair of pants. That would be helpful in this moment, and so on and so forth. So tell me that you know that I've been shopping for a sofa as I walk into the Williams-Sonoma store. And don't talk to me about anything else, because you know you have my browse history. I have been shopping for a sofa. So those kinds of moments in time when consumers expect value, it takes a lot of data, a lot of compute, a lot of high-end intelligence, not historical intelligence, but predictive intelligence to serve that consumer.
You bring up a great point here, moving this conversation to then privacy. I mean, and the shift of right now that's happening with, I think, third-party cookies, right? And how do you see that will change and affect how retailers are and enterprises are going to have to change? Are they going to have to change? Like, you won't be able to track the same amount of data?
Yes, there's this whole conversation going on and evolution going on about third-party cookies going away, so that retargeting as we know it is being phased out. So you cannot follow the consumer across websites. Like if I was looking at a pair of shoes, everywhere I go, the same pair of shoes shows up. So none of that will be possible. So I think, there's an evolution happening. Let's talk about it from the side of the consumer, right? There is a generational evolution happening, and then there is people are waking up to, oh my God, they have all my data. So I think there is a trade-off being made between convenience and security, convenience and privacy. And each generation is making that trade-off differently. In my generation, Forrester has actually done this survey that says in my generation, people are more into privacy, less on convenience. But if you ask my daughter, the teenage daughter, the same question, they want more convenience than privacy. So there is a difference in what we want as consumers. And I think the brands will react to that. But today the centerpiece is, I think the pendulum has swung so highly on, I have all this data for everybody, oh my God. So it is centered on privacy, as it should be. We need to button up our systems from the governance, risk, security angle, so that we are secure in how we react with brands, and brands are secure in how they add value to us. But I think we will chart a middle path as the generation, my teenage daughters become the paying generation. They want convenience. So they will certainly push the boundaries on what you, the brand, can do and know about me, so you can add value to me in the moment. So it's to be seen. Now, we as a company, ZineOne, play really well into this notion of, as third-party cookies go away, you can't track the consumer anymore across the web. So what does brands do? Brands have to react to that consumer when they're on your site. That's your only shot. You can't follow them around. So do more with them, add value to them when they are on your site, on that first, second, third click. If you can add value in that moment, then you can build a relationship with them. So our tagline on this is make every moment count. Make every session count. Real-time marketing, which is when they are there, help them in that moment, not after the fact.
You paint a picture in my head when you describe some of this of convenience and the desire right there, real time, of in hotel space or hospitality. People appreciate a very high end hotel where there's a butler, someone that oh, can I get something for you? They know what you need. They just provide for it. Now everything is online and digital. In some ways, we're starting to expect the same from our digital devices and our experiences. All right, just show me what I want so I can live a better life. Where do you see this going? Like, how far can and will this go?
There's a name for it. It's sort of the digital concierge, right? And the idea here is that if you are able to look at that data as it's happening intelligently, then you can really add a lot of value without being too much on your face. The reason people feel badly about this is that they get spammed. How many emails did I get from a particular brand in a given day? Oh my God, please take me off the list. Because you're spamming me, you're sending me the same thing over and over again, and a lot of it. Fast forward 5 years, if the brands do their jobs right, and they are able to take advantage of the compute and storage available to them today, and able to analyze those real-time streams of consumer behavior as they're in their stores or in their website or on their mobile app or in the bank or in the hospitality in the casino, then you can know what they want. Like, give you an example, we actually work for one of the largest hospitality brands casinos in Las Vegas. As the person walks into the casino, if you know that they have booked massages every time they've come in for the last 5 years, I would appreciate you asking me, would you like to book a massage during your stay? Because it prompts me to do something I want. But you don't get that experience today. I mean, there is a distance between what you get and what is possible, truly possible. This is not hard to do. So that's what I mean, that I think there is a gap, and I think intelligence, so this is that rise of that intelligence layer over the data layer, that's necessary, absolutely necessary with technologies like machine learning and AI and this and that allow you to know their minds and therefore react in a non-spammy, value-added way.
More and more retailers are online for necessary reasons, becoming more and more digital. What do you see as the major hurdles for a retailer to put more of an emphasis in their digital presence?
I think it's an evolution. We work with all sorts, right? We work with the ones that are highly evolved and have really taken advantage of digital transformation even before COVID hit. So there was a lot of focus already on e-commerce, on online revenue generation. We saw the evolution at top 10 retailer. Kohl's is one of our big customers. You know, early 2017-18, when a large portion of their e-commerce, of their revenue was already coming to e-commerce and growing at a significant rate. But there is also sort of a long tail of providers that have focused largely on traditional brick and mortar and are moving over and learning how to do it. So we will see this as an evolution. They will get there because I think it's the absolute necessity. I think there's no two ways about it. Now more than ever, like, we are happy clicking and buying the stuff here, sitting in my office or at home, rather than walking in.
You mentioned earlier, already at Bell Laboratories, that you were writing research papers that are coming true today. What are you thinking of right now, or could ponder, make a prediction of, that could come to fruition in the future?
I think it's, we are watching the evolution of 5G very carefully. And I think, smart cars are already here. Smart refrigerators are already here. So we used to actually write about those 20 years ago. But I think with 5G, intelligent endpoints will be far beyond your phone and your computer. It'll be all over your house and office. And what I see coming is that those intelligent endpoints will not be unidimensional of, oh, I'm a Nest temperature regulator, but the Nest thing can do more functions and everything. There will be sort of a omni evolution on these digital endpoints that do many things. And as a result, I think all those expectations in regards to being able to react to real-time context on a phone and a computer and in the store will evolve to all of these endpoints that are all over your house and your offices and cars. And so for example, you could be shopping in your car, you could be shopping in front of your refrigerator. So there will be a lot more pressure. And can you imagine the amount of data that means? Like, the consumer has 10 endpoints in the house that's streaming different kinds of data in regards to what he or she is doing. So the ability to harness that data at scale, we think cloud is big today. Cloud's about to go through the roof, even beyond anything we've imagined. And the compute power necessary to look at that data and make sense of it. And technologies like ours that allow you then to react to that intelligence in real time back to the consumer to add value.
Just kind of for fun, as a consumer of technology, I'm sure, is there, in the past 6 months, do you have a favorite cheap software or tech that you've used personally?
Oh, I'm in love with Chorus.ai. So we bought a license to it, which is, we get to hear firsthand what our customers are saying to our team members, so on and so forth. The learnings are just amazing from what we can do through voice recognition and voice analysis and so on and so forth. So I'm loving that.
I always like to ask that question because there's always new fascinating use cases for technology. There's a powerful journey that you've painted, both from your initial stages to this growth and where you are headed. If you had any closing thoughts for someone, again, in the enterprise space, that's where your focus, enterprise, retail, and e-commerce, that you would want them to know about, what would you share?
I think it's all about product when you are building an enterprise startup, because this is typically a very highly competitive and long sales cycle driven entry point, unlike mid-market and so on and so forth. So your product has to go the distance. It has to be battle tested, it has to deliver results, and it has to be in for the long term. This is not a sort of get in and out, leaky bucket, which is possible in other markets. But enterprise, if you take 9 months to get in, it better stick, otherwise you wasted all that time. So it is about product. Make sure you spend the time in perfecting it. We took 2-3 years to just purely work on the product before it came to market. So that's a long time. It requires a lot of money to really do that. So if you are going to go after the enterprise space, buckle up. It needs money, it needs time, it needs a lot of grit, but the payoff is really strong at the end if you get it right.
I love it. Thank you so much, Debjani, for sharing your insights. For those that want to learn more about ZineOne, it is ZineOne.com, ZineOne.com. You'll be able to learn more. Thanks for your time, Debjani. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on. Appreciate the time.
And we'll see you all on the next episode of UpTech Report. Have you seen a company using AI, machine learning, or other technology to transform the way we live, work, and do business? Go to uptechreport.com and let us know.